Hey, what's going on, guys? A week ago today, I completed Volume 2, or my 2025 edition, whatever you want to call it, of my 31 Days of Horror Challenge. For those who don't know what that is, that's where I watch and review 31 different horror movies over 31 days, all through the month of October till we get to Halloween. So, for those who hadn't checked out that series, go and check it out. Hopefully, there's a handful of reviews there that you do find interesting. But like I usually like to do at the end of my 31 Days of Horror Challenge is a quick little recap, putting together a top 10 list of my favourite movies that I checked out throughout the 31 days. But before I get into the actual list, and I want to try and keep this intro short and sharp, I just want to remind you guys how I normally put this list together in particular, because I like to do it a little bit differently. It's not going to be a top 10 list of the best horror movies that I watched over the 31 days, or the top 10 highest rated movies that I watched over the 31 days. I don't do that because the list will end up just being pretty stock standard and, all the same titles that you would sort of come to expect pop up on the list. Instead, whenever I do these recap lists of top 10 movies that I watched over the challenge, it's top 10 movies that I found a new appreciation for, or if they were first time watchers, found a love for in the first place, or just movies that I think back throughout the 31 days and I'm like, you know what, I had a really good experience watching that movie, or maybe a few days had passed and I'm like, you know what, like that movie just really stuck with me or something like that. So yeah, take out of your mind that it's going to be a best of list or anything like that. You may have watched one of my reviews where I gave a movie like an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10, something like that, and it might not even pop up on this list. It's just the way that I like to do these recap top 10s of the 31 days. Just wanted to clear that up, but without delaying any longer, let's get into a top 10 list of my favourite watches from Volume 2 of the 31 Days of Horror Challenge. Just before I start off my list with my number 10, I just wanted to quickly throw a blanket over all of these movies, because I said in my intro that a first time watch could make its way onto this list because it's its first time affecting me and things like that, but I actually had to double check the lineup. None of them are first time watches, so I just wanted to quickly throw an umbrella over all of that. But starting off my list with my number 10, here I have the original 50s version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, this might surprise a few people popping up on this list, because if you remember my review, I didn't praise this movie from start to finish. I do have some problems with it. For me, it's sort of a movie of two halves. The first half, I fucking adore this movie. I think the small town feel, the conspiracy, the paranoia. Honestly, the first half is like really fucking creepy also. But the second half, or more so the middle, is where I'm not really vibing it. It just becomes like evading capture, going to place A, people find them, going to place B, people find them, and it's just a whole heap of running around, which I'm not really digging, but the first half is so fucking cool. And what makes the first half so cool is just the fundamentals of what this story is. The story genuinely is really creepy. This movie is one that's been duplicated, pun not intended, so many times. And after I watched the movie again, and it stuck with me, I actually had the thought, I'm like, I've never checked out the 70s version of this movie, and if you ask majority of people, I think most people would probably say that they prefer the 70s version. So I actually went out after watching the movie for the 31 days, went and picked up the 70s version, which is actually on my shelf right now, and gave that one a watch the other night. Honestly, I'm not in love with that one either. It sort of has the same problems that this one does. But just the fact that this movie stuck with me, and I'm like, fuck, I've never actually watched the 70s version of this movie, I think earns it a spot on this list. Like I said, movies that stuck with me and impacted me. Invasion of the Body Snatchers from the 50s did that, so that's my number 10. Coming in at my number 9 is almost like a comfort movie for myself. Every time I watch this movie, it just is a breeze to get through, and I enjoy it every time. Here I have William Castle's Straight Jacket, starring Joan Crawford. This is a movie with a lot of twists and turns and reveals and things like that, and obviously over time when you've seen a movie, I think this was like my third time checking it out, the twists and turns, you see them coming, so maybe it becomes slightly less impactful, but every time I watch this movie I still have a blast, and like I said, it's almost a comfort movie for me now. Like, I know when the twists are coming, the turns and everything like that, but I just enjoy the setting, I enjoy the characters, I enjoy what's going on here. I'm happy that I got a comment, I think it was from Moods actually, saying that he was aware that the storyline is very similar to Psycho 2, which is something I've always brought up and never heard anyone else say. But yeah, Straight Jacket for me is a movie, every time I've checked it out, I don't think it's ever really grown on me or dropped in any particular way, which isn't a bad thing. It's just stayed consistently good. So coming in at my number 9 is Straight Jacket. Coming in at my number 8 is actually the movie that kicked off this year's 31 Days of Horror. Here I have Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2. Now, I've been one to say that the Evil Dead franchise is one of the most consistent horror franchises. You know, you bring up the original trilogy, and then you've got the remakes and spin offs that have been pretty well received. But within the same breath, I've also been one to say that the Evil Dead franchise isn't one that I like as much as other people do. And in particular, Evil Dead 2. I'm aware it's very fun, and it's obviously got a very different tone to the first movie, which has always been the thing that has sort of held me back. I prefer the more grounded horror approach that the first one has, or the remake, for example. But it could have been the fact that it was kicking off the 31 days and I was just in the mood to get into horror for the Halloween time and things like that. I had a fucking blast with this movie. Probably the most fun I've ever had with Evil Dead 2. Just the effects and the jokes didn't bother me as much as they usually do. Just everything going on in this movie. It just put me in such a good mood for the rest of the 31 Days of Horror. It just kicked it off in the right spirits. So coming in at my number 8 is Evil Dead 2. Coming in at my number 7 was the biggest asterisk for this year's 31 Days of Horror, because it is not a horror movie. It's one I've always had on my shelf in the horror collection, just because I've never known where else to put it, and it does have like horrific stuff going on. But the movie is from 2000. It is Chopper, starring Eric Bana as the real life underworld Melbourne figure here, Mark Chopper Reed. Yeah, I just sort of snuck it into my 31 days because I'm like, if I have any time to talk about it, I can just sneak it in within 30 other movies, and you know, this can be my chance to talk about it. This has always been one of my personal favourite movies, regardless of genre, one of my all-time favourite performances from Eric Bana, and this movie is almost very personal to me because as I said, it's based on a real life person and a real life story, and a lot of the areas that are brought up in this movie and locations and you know, just a lot of things going on is very local to me. You know, this movie's set in Melbourne, though I don't live directly in the city. Melbourne's not too far from me, and like I said, a lot of the areas and things going on isn't very foreign to me, and even just the lingo and, you know, the sayings and things like that, it just feels very comfortable to me, even though, as I said, there's horrific things going on here. And I was actually very surprised how well received the review for Chopper was, considering, like I said, it's 31 Days of Horror, and yeah, there's no case I can make to say that this is a horror movie. But my number 7 goes to Chopper. Coming in at my number 6 is another movie I checked out pretty early on in the 31 days. Here I have the film Deep Blue Sea. Now, I know a lot of people hold this in pretty high regard when it comes to killer shark movies. I've always had an appreciation for this movie, but the thing that sort of held me back from holding it on that top tier with everyone else is the fact I hadn't checked out this movie in such a long time. I remembered elements about it, but it was pretty vague in my head. But rewatching it for the 31 days, fuck, I had a blast with this movie. Like a really good balance between like action, sci-fi, horror, even a bit of comedy in there and things like that. And I feel like whenever we get a killer shark movie with those elements nowadays, it's on a micro budget. It feels like whoever's made the movie isn't even really trying to make a good film. You know, it just feels half-assed, and you know, all the sci-fi killer shark movies coming out nowadays, they're all pretty shitty. You can maybe have a little bit of fun with it, but you know, just not in the same way that Deep Blue Sea is. Like Deep Blue Sea, it feels like a lot of people put so much care, and you know, they were trying to make a good movie. They put at least a decent sized budget behind it as well. I feel like the closest thing we've had to Deep Blue Sea over the past handful of years is the Meg movies, and even they haven't quite iced the cake perfectly. I think this movie was just a ton of fun to come back to. I'm gonna try not to leave such a big time space between checking out this movie again. When it comes to killer shark movies, it's either I'm watching a new release, so checking it out for the first time, or going back to a classic like Jaws, because who doesn't like Jaws? But Deep Blue Sea, I'm so happy that this movie was kind of what I remembered it being growing up, but like I said, it was just such a big time gap since the last time I checked it out. So number 6, Deep Blue Sea. Really fun rewatch. Coming in at number 5, I'm surprised to know people, you know, if this was actually ranking the movies on how good they are, this one would probably be higher, but here we have the film Misery. Again, probably would have been higher if it was on a standard of how good the movie is, but everyone knows how good Misery is. So either way, you got Kathy Bates and James Caan putting together a hell of a fucking duo in this movie. Like the acting in this film, just from those two alone, is phenomenal. The storyline that they have going on here is just so neat, tidy, precise. Whenever you're watching a horror thriller, you're always thinking like, okay, how would I get out of this situation? They throw everything to you in this movie, and I'm there scratching my fucking head going, okay, I guess I'm fucked because I'm not getting out of here. I just really like the insanity from Kathy Bates. I think James Caan, just because he's going up against Kathy Bates, who is so notable in this role, he does just such a great job that I feel like is underappreciated. He's also incredible. I mean, what is there to say about Misery that people haven't said before? So coming in at my number 5 is Misery. Coming in at my number 4 is a movie that I'm so happy is sort of started to get a lot more appreciation for the right reasons over the past handful of years. Here I have Cannibal Holocaust from 1980. Like I said, I feel like this movie, especially within the mainstream, has always had a bad rap for such a long time, but over the past handful of years, I think word has started to spread on, the real themes and what's going on behind this storyline within the movie and things like that. And rewatching it for the 31 days, like, again, I just found another appreciation for this movie that I've always had, but it's just grown on me more and more over time. And I think I even said in my review, over the past handful of years is probably where I've come back to rewatch this movie the most. And hopefully with my review, people look at it in a different light that maybe they haven't looked at before in the past. Like I said, I don't want to just go back into what this movie actually represents and things like that. Go and watch the movie for yourself and figure it out, because hopefully you do look at it in a different light and not just take it for face value and things like that. But Cannibal Holocaust coming in at my number 4, just a really enjoyable rewatch considering, the subject matter of what's going on in this movie. But yeah, my number 4. And complete change of pace here. Coming in at my number 3, we have Monster House. This was actually the review I did for day number 31, so obviously being Halloween. And I'm always one to defend kids horror or gateway horror or even animated horror, because I think a lot of people would just see an animated movie and go, yeah, no, there's no horror in that whatsoever. If this movie was live action, people would not even fucking second guess it. Like, the backstory of why this house is haunted, dark as fuck, but it's also got a lot of humor. It's got something for everybody, adults, kids, a whole family can sit down and watch this for Halloween, and honestly, I think they would feel satisfied. I've been a defender for this movie for the longest time. It's one that I think I almost watch it like yearly. Like, this is just a movie that I always have a blast with, and there was no way it wasn't going to make it onto this top 10 list. So coming in at my number 3 is Monster House. Coming in at my number 2 is 1988's Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Now, this is just one of those weird movies that I've always had such a love for. Every time I watch this movie, I have a blast. It's honestly one of my all-time favorites from the 80s, or just even ever. Like, if I was to put together a top 50 list of favorite horror movies, Killer Clowns from Outer Space would be in there. But it's just one of those weird ones where throughout my lifespan on YouTube, which to be fair hasn't been the longest time, maybe 3-4 years, I've just never really had the chance, or just sort of blanked on bringing this one up and showing off how much I love this movie. And within the review of the 31 days that I did for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I finally got to let rip. I fucking love this movie. I think it's so fun, creative. I think the effects are awesome. There's honestly some like dark, creepy shit going on in this movie as well. Like, I remember rewatching this one for the 31 days and I'm like, fuck, I want to watch it again. But, with the 31 days and fitting in 31 movies over 31 days and, other things going on in life, I just didn't really have the time. But like, throughout the rest of the 31 days, every time I watched a new movie for the new review, I'm like, I could probably squeeze in another watch of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Like, this movie, to me, is just the epitome of fun, creativity. If you want to know my complete thoughts of any of these movies, but Killer Clowns in Outer Space, go back and check out the review, because I think this movie's awesome. Number 2, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, 1988. And then number 1, surprise to nobody probably, but here I have Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, the reason why this is my number 1, I know I said at the start of this list, there probably isn't too many movies I'll place too high because they won't surprise too many people and things like that. But I have been one to say on my channel before, and I'm not going to lie to you and say that I haven't. I've always loved Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I do. I fucking really do like this movie. I think it's awesome as hell. But honestly, not even that long ago, I did a ranking of the franchise, and this was my number 3. And I think it's because I come back to part 2 and the remake more than this one. But coming back to this movie, for this year's 31 Days, knowing it's a movie I already love, and don't get me wrong, I have always appreciated this movie and loved it and things like that, but it just hit on a whole new level. This is probably the most I've ever enjoyed TCM. And I was like kind of embarrassed, like I'm like, fuck, like, as I said, it's just a matter of coming back to part 2 and the remake more. I think if I had come back to this one sooner over time, like, I could have been higher on that ranking, but I just found a whole new appreciation for one of the all-time greats of the horror genre, and I think that's just really cool about doing the 31 Days, and I think sometimes coming back and just doing movies that a lot of people do already know and love, it's safe to do reviews of movies that, not a lot of people have heard of and try and throw them on the radar and things like that. I still do enjoy doing that, but coming back to one that everyone knows and loves and then just finding a whole new appreciation for it is also a really cool feeling. So coming in at my number 1 is TCM, the original. No surprises here. Now, like I usually do at the end of the top 10s, a quick little rapid fire recap and then we'll get out of here. So coming in at number 10, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original 50s version. Number 9, Straight Jacket by William Castle. Number 8, the original Evil Dead 2, directed by Sam Raimi. Number 7, Chopper, as I said, snuck that one in there this year. Number 6, Deep Blue Sea, fun killer shark movie. Number 5, Misery, classic. Number 4, Cannibal Holocaust. Number 3, the one that I watched on Halloween and massive change of pace from Cannibal Holocaust, Monster House. Number 2, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And number 1, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Thank you for joining me for this list, guys. I know I can sort of be a little bit repetitive talking about movies that I just spent a month doing reviews for, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this top 10 as well, and a quick little recap. And for those who haven't checked out my 31 Days of Horror from this year, like I said, hopefully even just talking about some of these movies sends you back to check out those full-length reviews. But thank you for joining me for today's video, guys, and like I said, after my break from the 31 Days, it's been a week since I completed that, I'll get back into a steady flow of the usual content that I would normally do on my channel. But thank you guys, I'll see you soon for another video.